Raiders fans, listen up because things are heating up in Las Vegas, and this story is too wild to ignore. Word around the league is that the Dallas Cowboys have been sniffing around, asking questions about a potential trade for Max Crosby. Yeah, you heard that right. Max freaking Crosby. And I know that sounds insane, but hang with me here because there's a lot more to this than just rumors flying on social media. Now, the buzz started when Trey Wingo dropped the news that Dallas reached out to the Raiders to talk about Crosby. Now, Trey isn't some random dude throwing darts at a board. He's well connected, especially inside NFL circles. And to make things even juicier, Adam Schefter came out not long after and said that the Cowboys are a team to keep an eye on as the trade deadline approaches. The timing of those two reports was almost identical, and that's what got people talking. When two insiders drop something that close together, it usually means there's at least a little bit of smoke behind the fire. But before Raider Nation loses its collective mind, another reliable source came out to throw water on the whole thing. Ricky Scoops said flat out that the Raiders have no plans to trade Crosby before the deadline. And honestly, that makes sense. For as long as I've been covering this team, it's been clear that Crosby isn't just another player. He's the soul of this defense, maybe even the soul of this entire roster. Trading him right now would be a move that sends shockwaves through the fan base and signals a full-on rebuild. That said, let's take a step back and look at why these rumors even exist in the first place. The key is in the contract. Earlier this year, the Raiders restructured Crosby's deal, a 3-year extension worth just over $106 million. It was front-loaded, meaning the big cash hit came the first 2 seasons, around $38 million in the first year, $32 in the second, and then the numbers dip from there. That kind of structure gives it flexibility down the road. It's almost like the Raiders built in an escape hatch for the future, just in case the team isn't winning by 2026 or 2027. And here's where things get interesting. Crosby's deal has 0 guaranteed money after a certain point. That's not an accident. It gives him leverage. If the Raiders are still struggling by the time he's 30, he'll have the freedom to request a move somewhere else without the team eating a bunch of dead money. Basically, he took care of himself financially while also leaving the door open if he ever wants a change of scenery. Now, Dallas being the team in question makes a little bit of sense if you connect the dots. Crosby's from the Dallas, Fort Worth area, he's got family there, and honestly, the Cowboys are always looking for star power. Imagine pairing Crosby with Micah Parsons. That's a nightmare for quarterbacks everywhere. But here's the thing. The price tag for Crosby would be massive. We're talking at least 2 first-round picks and probably more. You don't trade away one of the top defensive players in the league for anything less. There are some proposed trade packages floating around online. And let me tell you, most of them were laughable. One of them had the Cowboys sending a single first-rounder and a couple of mid-round picks. That's cute, but no thanks. If you're moving a guy like Max Crosby, you better be getting the kind of return that reshapes your franchise, multiple first-rounders, a 4th, maybe even another late-round pick that can be flipped later. Nothing less. But let's be real, the odds of the Raiders actually pulling the trigger are slim to none right now. Crosby isn't just a player. He's a leader, a symbol of what the Raiders are supposed to stand for. He's the guy who plays every down like it's his last, who bleeds silver and black. You can't teach that kind of intensity. You can't replace that in the locker room. And honestly, you can't rebuild culture when you're trading away the one player who embodies it. Still, it's not totally crazy to understand why people are even whispering about this possibility. The Raiders are sitting at 2 wins and 5 losses. They look disjointed, frustrated, and lost. And if you've heard Crosby talk recently, he sounds defeated, like a guy who's tired of losing and giving everything he has with little to show for it. He wants to win, plain and simple. Every time he takes the field, you can see it in his eyes. So, from an emotional standpoint, if there was ever a moment when a player like Max could even consider a move, this might be the window. But I'll say it again, I'd be stunned if it actually happens. Because as much as Crosby wants a win, he also wants to be a Raider for life. His connection with owner Mark Davis is strong. It's not some basic player-owner relationship. It's personal. There's real respect there. In fact, There are whispers that if Max stays in Vegas for his entire career, he could end up with a small ownership stake in the franchise when it's all said and done. That's how deep this bond runs. Think about that. While some players chase championships, others think long-term. Max knows that staying in Las Vegas could set him up financially for life, not just as a player, but as a businessman after football. He's building a brand, a legacy, and a life in that city. That's not something you just walk away from, even for a team like the Cowboys. Now, when we talk about trade rumors, we've also got to mention the other noise floating around, and that's about wide receiver Jakobi Meyers. According to several reports, teams have reached out about him too. The Raiders aren't aggressively shopping him, but they're listening. Meyers apparently requested a trade earlier in the season, and it looks like he still wants out. The front office, though, seems content to wait until the offseason before making any big decisions. If the Raiders do move him, it'll be because they don't want to pay him, and they already have young receivers waiting in the wings like Jack Beck and Dante Thornton Jr. On the other hand, Meyers is still their top wideout, and losing him would only make things harder for this offense, especially for Geno Smith and Coach Chip Kelly, who are already under pressure to show progress. But trading him mid-season might not make sense anyway. Even if he hits free agency next year, the Raiders are projected to get a fourth-round compensatory pick for him. So, it might be smarter to just ride it out. Still, Meyers wanting out adds another layer of tension to a team that's clearly in flux. And as if that weren't enough drama, there are reports that the Raiders have been reaching out to other teams about adding a cornerback or a defensive lineman. But honestly, I don't get it. When you're 2-5, trading for players doesn't fix your problems, it just delays them. You draft the guys like Darian Porter, Tonka Hemingway, and J.J. Pages. Why not give them a chance to play? Let the young guys develop instead of trying to patch holes with short-term moves. If they really want to trade for someone, there are a couple of corners who could make sense. Tariq Woolen from Seattle has long been connected to Pete Carroll and his defensive system, and Alani Taylor from New Orleans is another name floating around, especially given the coaching connections between the Saints and the Raiders. Both would fit the kind of aggressive, physical defense that Vegas wants to build. But at the end of the day, none of that matters if this team doesn't start winning. And that's the real point behind all these rumors, the frustration. Crosby's frustration, the fans' frustration, even ownership's frustration. Everyone can feel it. The Raiders have been stuck in this weird in-between zone for too long. Not good enough to contend, but not bad enough to rebuild properly. And until that changes, the whispers about big moves and shocking trades are going to keep coming. Now here's where things get even more real for Raider Nation, because when you start talking about the future of this team, you can't just look at the roster and contracts. You have to look at the soul of the organization. And right now, that soul is restless. Max Crosby has been carrying this franchise on his back for years. Every game, every snap, you can feel the energy he brings. He plays with fire, passion, and pride. But when the team around him keeps falling short, that kind of drive turns into frustration. You could see it in his face after the last loss. You could hear it in his post-game interviews. The man is tired of losing, and who could blame him? If the Raiders really are sitting at 2 wins and 5 losses, the reality is they're not competing for anything meaningful this year. That's the brutal truth. And that's exactly why trade rumors like this start swirling around. It's not always because teams want to move a player. Sometimes it's because people can feel that something has to change. The fans feel it, the players feel it, and the front office knows it too. You can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. Now, let's go back to Max for a second. If you followed him since the Hard Knocks days back in 2019, you know his story. He's been through hell and back. From being a mid-round draft pick that nobody expected much from, to becoming one of the most dominant defensive forces in the entire league. He's battled injuries, he's battled addiction, he's battled doubt. And through all of it, he's become the heartbeat of this team. For Raider fans, he's more than a player, he's family. That's why even hearing his name in trade discussions hits like a punch to the gut. But football is a business, and sometimes even loyalty has a price tag. That's the reality of this league. If a full rebuild is coming, and it feels like one might be, then the front office has to at least listen when teams call. Not because they want to trade him, but because they have to understand what kind of value he carries. If you're starting over, the one player who could bring back the kind of haul that actually changes your future is Max Crosby. But again, that's what makes this whole situation so complicated. Trading him might help in the long term, but it would tear the heart out of the fan base in the short term. And here's another layer people don't always talk about. Max isn't just close with Mark Davis. He's become one of the faces of the Raiders' identity in Las Vegas. When the team made the move from Oakland, they needed a new generation of stars to carry the brand, to make the silver and black feel like Vegas. Max became that guy. He embraced the city, built relationships with local businesses, charities, and fans. He's the player kids in Vegas grow up idolizing. You don't just trade that away without serious thought. Still, every time a team starts losing, everyone becomes fair game in trade rumors. Look at the contract again. It was designed with flexibility for a reason. If the Raiders can't find their footing over the next season or two, it's not crazy to think that conversation might actually happen. But not now. Right now, Max is the glue holding this locker room together. If you take him out, you risk completely losing the culture that still exists inside those walls. And speaking of culture, that's another issue this team has been struggling with. Since the move to Vegas, it's been a carousel of coaches, coordinators, and quarterbacks. No identity, no consistency, no long-term vision. You can have all the talent in the world, but if there's no leadership at the top, it doesn't matter. That's why these trade rumors aren't just about Max Crosby or Jakobi Meyers. They're symptoms of a bigger problem. The organization needs direction. It needs to decide whether it's trying to win now or rebuild for later, because right now it feels like they're stuck somewhere in between, and that's the worst place to be. Now, let's talk about Jakobi Meyers again, because his situation tells us a lot about where the front office's head is at. Meyers is talented, reliable, and still young, but he's clearly unhappy. When a player of his caliber wants out, it usually means one of two things. Either he's frustrated with the direction of the team, or he's looking for a fresh start somewhere that feels more stable. Either way, it's not a great look for a franchise trying to convince its fans it's on the right path. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The NFL world is buzzing this morning after the shocking announcement that Brian Burns has officially joined the Las Vegas Raiders, sending ripples of excitement and speculation through the league. Known for his relentless pass-rushing ability and jaw-dropping speed off the edge, Burns' arrival in Sin City has sparked a frenzy of conversation among fans, analysts, and rival teams alike. While nothing is confirmed beyond the official signing, whispers around NFL circles suggest that the Raiders see Burns as the missing piece in a defense that has long struggled to dominate in the trenches. Insiders hint that the Raiders' front office has been courting Burns for months, keeping discussions under wraps until the perfect moment. The buzz now revolves around how defensive coordinator Patrick Graham plans to unleash Burns in a scheme designed to maximize his elite talents. Could we see a new 4-3 hybrid formation, or perhaps a more aggressive blitz package featuring Burns as the centerpiece? Sources suggest that the team is ready to lean heavily on his speed and agility, aiming to make opposing quarterbacks think twice before dropping back to pass. Among fans, speculation is reaching fever pitch. Social media feeds are flooded with takes predicting double-digit sack seasons and comparisons to some of the league's all-time pass-rushing greats. There are even whispers that the Raiders could pivot toward a defense-first identity this season, with Burns as the anchor. Meanwhile, rival teams are reportedly bracing for a nightmare scenario in which every offensive line must account for one of the fastest and most dynamic edge rushers in the NFL today. Of course, with all the hype comes the inevitable questions. Can Burns adapt to a new system? Will he find chemistry with the Raiders' secondary? And most importantly, can Las Vegas finally make a defensive statement in a league dominated by high-octane offenses? The murmurs suggest that everyone in the NFL is watching closely, and some insiders are already betting that the Raiders' pass rush is about to enter elite mode. If the rumors hold any weight, the AFC West may have just acquired its most feared defensive weapon. For now, fans are left to speculate, debate, And imagine what a Burns-led pass rush could mean for a team desperate to turn hype into headlines and wins. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.